90 minutes past 10 o'clock in your element, Niki Seberini, and thanks for staying with us. Well, we've had self-esteem engineer Bev Malone, and it was wonderful to listen to her doing the numeric profiling, then Mashi Lipska talking about the Rebbe. And I have been telling you the whole morning that Martha Beck would be coming into the studio. So we're all very excited here at Chaifm. Martha Beck, a life coach, best-selling author, also writes fantastic articles for O Magazine. Yesterday afternoon, I was lucky enough to go along to the Good Choices supported by O Magazine and Dentine, and that's when I got to see Martha live for the first time. So it's lovely to have you in the studio, Martha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
You are a busy lady, a very, very busy
Aren't we all?
and welcome back to South Africa.
Thank you.
But this is not a new place for you. This is, I mean, you've been here many times.
Yeah, I love it here. I consider it my home away from home. And I've been dreaming about it since my son was born 24 years ago, and didn't even realize I was dreaming about South Africa until I came and started seeing in real life what I'd seen in dreams before. Amazing.
Is that when the love affair began? In a dream?
Yes. Yes, without question. I would see these vivid scenes of African animals, and I had intensely emotional reactions. And I thought they were symbolic dreams. And I tried to analyze them because I do that as a life coach. That's part of my gig. And it just, an elephant was an elephant. An antelope was an antelope. They weren't symbols. They were real. And then 20-some years later, I've seen all of them in 3 dimensions.
Amazing. So what brought you to South Africa?
Well, initially it was the book I wrote about my son who has Down syndrome. So I wrote a book called Expecting Adam, which became quite popular here. And the Penguin publishers very graciously invited me to come and do some publicity here. So that's what brought me.
Well, let's look at your book, Expecting Adam. I remember reading it.
Oh.
And I remember it had a profound impact on me.
Oh.
And also how, we live in a society today when we're able to make decisions. Mm-hmm. And we can be so unemotional about these decisions because we want our lives to be, convenient, and we want things to work. And when it comes to falling pregnant, and we can have a certain test made, done, and then we have to make a decision based on the outcome, the results, it questions so much, and that's why I found this book so interesting. You, this academic, studying, falling pregnant, finding out that your unborn baby had Down syndrome, and then making the decision to go ahead. How did you come to that decision? Did you have to spend a lot of time thinking about it? You talk about this energy, feeling this energy inside of you.
I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. The diagnosis came very late in the pregnancy, and only because I had been in a fire in a high-rise building. I was living on the 10th floor of a building, and there was a fire in the basement. And I tried to get out through the stairwell, but the stairwell was acting like a chimney, so it was full of smoke. I had an older daughter, and we were trying to get out. There was zero visibility, and I started to lose consciousness before I got out of the building. And someone picked me up. I thought it was a firefighter, and walked me down the last flight of steps like a puppet and sort of pushed me into the air. And I never saw him because I was coughing so hard. I was gasping for air. It was like drowning. And the thing is that photographs were taken by the newspapers, and it was on the TV news that night. And they showed me coming out of the smoke, and there was no one with me. That kind of thing started happening from the moment that pregnancy began. So by the time I had the decision to make, the dreams started. I started to be able to see if I think of someone I loved, I would suddenly see what they were seeing around them. It really upended my worldview as a very rational person right from the beginning. And then when the diagnosis came, it just felt like, yes, there's something about this. It's not just a coincidence. And I was in love with the baby already. So it really wasn't a hard decision, but I was devastated by the diagnosis. I couldn't see how it would turn out well. Because I think it's what a caterpillar can't really imagine life as a butterfly. So what to the end of the world, what to the caterpillar is the end of the world, to the master is a butterfly, so they say.
Amazing. Well, yesterday you described him as the greatest gift.
Yeah,
the greatest
absolutely.
gift. Oh.
He's fantastic.
Oh, wonderful. So you had these dreams. You then came to South Africa. I mean, you think of this whole picture. You wrote this book. You had a great response here. You came here. And when you first arrived in South Africa, did you think, hang on, I'm feeling something here. I'm getting a sense that this is the place. This is what I was dreaming about.
It's very strange. I mean, my life physically is so much more privileged and safe in the U.S. There's less crime, there's less poverty, we just have it better materially. But I feel more emotionally safe in South Africa than in any other place on earth. I feel physically safe in America, but I feel emotionally and spiritually safe here.
Have you investigated why it is that you have this pull, that you have this feeling,
endlessly,
this sense here?
Endlessly. And that's what the book I just wrote, I spent 5 years focusing on ancient people from all over the globe, but almost every chapter begins with a story about South Africa, because to me it will always be the most magical place. And I did a lot of research. That's how I was trained to be an academic. So I've explored many, many different avenues to figure out, wow, what is this thing that's linking me to Africa and linking Africa to my destiny? And I think it speaks to people who aren't just me. So I've tried to sort of bring Americans and Europeans with me to South Africa in this book, so they can feel some of that magic as well.
It is a magical place.
It is.
I agree with you. There is a magic in this place.
Without question.
I love this country. Martha, Finding Your Way in a Wild New World, your new book, 4 Steps to Fulfilling Your True Calling. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because you mentioned it during the talk yesterday. But I'd like to just go back, because I mean, you were brought up. You were brought up as a Mormon.
Yeah.
You were born in Utah.
Yes,
You've
indeed.
got 7 siblings.
Yes.
And that's got to be extraordinary. That's got to be something. I mean, you're looking at a strict upbringing, a religious upbringing. Mm-hmm. So how do you think that type of upbringing defined you?
Well, I later came to think it was a little bit like being locked in a dungeon and then having the dungeon keepers throw in the key, because it was a very rigid sort of fundamentalist religion that I was raised with. You know, there is one way to God and only one, and people, we have the way and everyone else is, way behind us, and they must become Mormon if they are going to be saved. And that kind of rigidity and judgment just did not work for me. I also considered it a very racist religion. It wasn't until 1978 that the Mormon authority was extended to people of African origin. So that bothered me from the time I was a small child. And but you can't be a questioning Mormon, really. You basically are in or you're out. So it felt suffocating. It felt like a dungeon. But the key was that it did give me the concept of having a personal spiritual life that was miraculous. And I was raised with that. And I rejected the entire religion. But that had sunk in at some point. And so I began to pursue it. After my son was born, I went and became very Mormon for about a year, because I thought, I guess they're right. There is a spirit world. And then I thought, no, this isn't working for me. So I left, and that was not received well. And I actually haven't had much contact with my family at all for the 20 years since then.
But you talk about the positive attributes. You talk about the positive things, and I think that is because there are people who are brought up in a home where there is no sense of religion or spirituality, and perhaps their struggle is finding that connection.
Exactly.
Whether it's with a God, a higher self, whatever it is.
Right.
Whereas that's what you had.
Yeah.
That is, and negative things. Just that sense of suffocation. That it was too prescriptive.
Anyone who decides that they have the answers, and I include, by the way, the rationalists that I joined at Harvard, where, the fact that people who have had near-death experiences, say there are blind people, there are many cases of blind people who've died clinically and then come back, and during the time they were supposedly dead, they can visually describe everything that was happening in the room. I was talking to a scientist about this the other day, and she said, I just don't believe any of this stuff, because there's nothing I can't explain. And I said, how do you explain that? And she said, well, it doesn't fit in science, so we don't consider it. That's not science. It's dogmatism. And any form of dogmatism that is, in Zen they say, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, in the expert's mind there are few. And I just like the beginner mind that says there's a mystery out there and I want to be open to it. And any kind of dogmatism sort of kills that.
Well, I said earlier that you've had this extraordinary life, your upbringing. You've written all of these fabulous books. You've got 3 children. You're this life coach. You change people's lives every single day, Martha. Did you know that this was your path? You talk about growing up and not really feeling like you belonged. Mm-hmm. But did you have a sense of this is the direction you were going in? Or have you just kind of gone along this path with the bumps and the turns?
Always just gone along the path. I call it a leaf in the stream behavior. You just
right.
I've always had a sense of a powerful current flowing in the world and a desire to be happy. That's it. And I'm not as altruistic as you're making me sound, because all I want to do is be happy. And that means surrendering to the flow of what wants to happen. And then I run into other people and they heal themselves and I get to watch. But I have no idea what to expect next week, next year. It could be anything.
But you talk about this rhythm, this path that you're on, the stream. How do you get onto the stream? People who are listening right now go, but hang on, I don't feel like I'm part of a rhythm. I feel like every time it feels like there's a slight stream, I hit the shore again.
Right.
And I want to get back on.
Well, your true nature, what I call your true nature, is part of the stream. It's not just floating on the stream. It is part of the stream. The only aspect of any animal, so far as we know, that goes contradictory to the stream of life is the human mind. Thinking, and especially our socialized minds. Mm-hmm. So we do what we feel is best for us until we encounter some sort of social training that says we're supposed to do something different. So I often ask crowds when I'm speaking, is everyone comfortable? And I'll ask several times, and they'll swear they're comfortable. And then I'll say, if you were home alone in your bedroom right now, how many of you would be sitting in the position you're in right now? And none of them. And I say, why not? And it turns out that they're not quite comfortable. But and that's fine. We can handle huge discomfort. The problem is that we don't know we're uncomfortable. We go blind to our own signals. So they're sitting there, their bodies know for a fact that they're not completely comfortable, and they will look me in the eyes in clear daylight and lie and believe the lie. Mm-hmm. And that's when we get into trouble.
So how do we take those blinkers off? How do we have sight? How do we have vision and connection to that?
Well, a big part of it for me is it's very difficult to do that in a room full of people or a city full of people. So for me, being alone in nature, where my nature is surrounded by the elemental forces, that's what grounds me. And if I don't have that, I get very, very weary. My energy gets frayed. So what I do, I just got back from 2 week-long seminars in the bush where I take a bunch of Americans and we do, every morning, every night, we do game drives in complete silence. And no one speaks, and there's such a tight bond that grows between the group, and the animals seem to want to come out and support us, and everyone goes into this state of, why did I even worry about doing things the way my family or my office wants? It just seems so ridiculous when you've tuned into nature. So nature to me is that's the medicine, as they say in Native American cultures.
Do you have to dip into that regularly?
Yes.
You've just had the 2 weeks, but how regularly to recharge every part of you?
It's getting more and more. And I don't think it's just my age, because I've noticed this in clients and in my other coaches of all ages, that the desire to reconnect with the earth and with the other creatures is growing stronger. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because we're at the very verge of actually destroying the ecosystems on which we depend. And my new book is all about this South African sort of invention of something called the restoration of the natural world. So I believe there's sort of a global feeling that it's time to become harmonious with the earth again. And I need it more and more and more.
When yesterday you spoke about Adam, when you brought him, and you bring him regularly to South Africa, and you just shared that story about the lion.
Yeah.
It touched me so deeply. Won't you please share that with the listeners?
I love this story. Adam doesn't speak much, and it's hard for him to create sentences, but he did. We had this conversation after he'd been stared at from a very close range by a big male lion, and I was a little nervous having this lion stare into
as
Adam's
one would be.
Yeah, he was less than a meter away. I mean, they were nose to nose. And a friend of mine asked him, "Weren't you scared?" He said, "No." He said, "Why not?" Because I was feeling what the lion was feeling. And we said, well, what was that? And he said, what lions always feel. And we said, well, what do lions always feel? And he said, peaceful.
Oh.
And then he said he was feeling me back.